Welcome to the Left Hemispheres podcast. It's Friday, January 25th. I'm Jack. With me, as always, is Steve.
Hello.
Adam.
Hello.
And Nick.
Hey,
You can find us on Facebook and Google+, and you can find us on Twitter at Left Hemispheres. But if you want, go ahead and comment on the blog at the show notes, which will be at lefthemispheres.com. If you subscribe via the podcast through iTunes, then please go ahead and consider rating us. If you do, it really helps us out. That'd be awesome. Thanks. Anyway, let's start off with our swear jar for the week.
Yeah. So last week was an improvement, by the way, for Nick and I at least. We are not as poor as we were the last episode.
Well, actually, we're more poor, just not to the great extent that we were after the first time.
Yeah, well, yeah. Okay, so, from the least expensive to most. All right, once again, Jack sweared the least, and he had 8. So he'll be chipping in $8. Adam came in at 12.
Wow. Upgrade.
Yeah, you did. Seriously, upgrade.
Double digits, you're a big boy now.
He put on his big boy pants and swore. And then, Nick, you dropped significantly down to 14.
Oh, my wife will be happy.
I thought you didn't tell her about that.
Oh, I didn't.
Okay. And then I came in at 25, which is...
Wow.
Slim it down, Steve.
Yeah, considering how much I'm far above everyone else, that's a significant drop. We'll tally that up, add it in with the last episode, and after a couple episodes, we'll be shooting this over to any secular charity that we want, since nobody is suggesting anything other than Foundation Beyond Belief or Doctors Without Borders. So, and with that, we'll just kick off right into just like the first thing. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Andy from Laughing in Purgatory had a post on this about a week ago about Abdelaziz Mohammed Al-Baz, the Egyptian blogger in Kuwait who was arrested for blasphemy charges. We have a Change.org petition on the in the show notes, for you to sign. I'm not a big believer in those Change.org petitions, but it's better than doing nothing. And even better than that, you should call your senator and U.S. representative or write them. We have links to that contact information. And I also want to bring up Pastor Saeed Abedini, who is a Christian minister in Iran who has been arrested, and I don't know if his trial started this week or not. They were supposed to release him on bail, but I don't know if that happened. The Iranians are full of shit all the time. But I wouldn't, we don't have to agree with a preacher, but nobody should be arrested for what they think and believe, as long as, it's different than action. So, I support both these guys. It's absurd that, one of our allies arrested somebody for blog posts, and obviously we're not allies with Iran. I don't know if you guys have anything to say about this.
I think that there's been some talk about, these people are breaking laws in their country, and laws are laws, and blah, blah, blah. And there's this sense that, protesting as Americans, and ultimately there's a problem with that kind of Facebook activism, click like, it doesn't really do anything.
Yeah, that's my kind of how I feel about the Change.org petitions, but
writing your senators and representatives, that gives them the incentive to put pressure on our foreign allies. The entire concept is that by engaging in the political process, you put pressure on your representatives to maybe engage in sanctions or something.
Mm-hmm.
Or
we won't give them F-16s.
Yeah.
We can all agree that it's more effective than prayer.
Yes.
and I'll say it. Another atheist blog, Bitch Spot, who I like. I don't agree with a lot of their stuff, but I like them. Had a post this past week about, these guys, they broke the law and they should know what they're getting into, and people in the West are whining about it, in which I disagree, but probably not for the reasons that they think. They brought up the idea of a social contract and the rule of law, and to that I say, fuck that. Because if we were to just adhere to the rule of law and whatever the majority deems the social contract, then nothing would change. I know BitchSpot they're a conservative atheist blog, one of the few. So I think one of the big differences there is that conservative viewpoint of, adhering to tradition and the status quo. I don't know. They probably won't really appreciate that. I don't know. They might.
I think to some extent it falls prey to the same line of thinking that causes anti-evolutionists to bring up second law of thermodynamics. Because his argument is essentially these states have these laws against this, which assumes that the state is a closed system, but it's not because it's still in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
We can't have any direct effect on those states' laws, but by us petitioning our representatives, we can maybe put political pressure on them to change their mind.
Right.
Which is our way of affecting stuff in other places. It's what we do.
Well, and it's not even about us in the West. In
it's context, it's about us in the West.
Well, yes, in context. But there. I think they refer to themselves as Cephas from BitSpot. We're basically saying that Abdel Aziz Muhammad Al-Baz and also the preacher Pastor Saeed, they knew what they were getting into. So they shouldn't whine, but no one's really whining. They're not whining. People are whining, like, if you want to say whining on their behalf. But
right,
you could say it's like a martyr position, or you could say it's just somebody trying to affect change.
Well, it is a martyr position. It's not.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about
Gandhi,
the mental point of view.
Right.
I'm not getting into their heads and trying to argue that even the Christian pastor, whether or not they're trying to martyr themselves. Al-Baz, the atheist blogger, all he was doing is typing. And then Cephas gets into, there are no objective rights. There are, which, I agree with. And to that, my response would be our rights aren't given to us by anybody. We take them from those that would try to hold us down. I don't know.
You don't ask permission for a right, especially a civil right.
Yeah, we have it codified.
Right.
We have a lot of our rights codified in this country, and a lot of countries don't. That doesn't mean that these rights don't exist. They don't exist as something, as he references, floating in the ether that we all just get to have. In my opinion, we have to take them because they are not granted to us. The founding of this country was taking rights.
Well, the rights are taken, not given.
Well, rights are innate. But to say that the first restriction of rights is at the point that you're infringing on someone else's rights.
Right.
Which, if we didn't have any higher reasoning capacity, there would be no objection from anyone about doing anything. But we do. And so we try to come up with a system where everybody has the most possible freedom, right? Without affecting anyone else too much. I think that's kind of the point.
Very libertarian of you.
Well, yeah, it's that kind of, your rights end where
but
my faith begins.
But I agree. I agree. I joke, but I agree. If your rights are what you feel you want to do is being abridged, then, you stand up for it and you take that right and you do what you want. That obviously people can take that the way they want, and that sentiment and that statement will be misconstrued, as it has been for millennia, by religious folk who will say, "See, they do whatever they want. I'm going to go fuck a goat now." But that's
actually,
not what I'm
in something like 13 states, there's not actually a law against fucking a goat. But that's beside the point. You can't have gay sex, but you can fuck a goat.
I bet they're red states.
They are.
Well, and actually, Washington, a blue state, recently revisited its law and considered making bestiality illegal. So it's the blue states that are fighting the war against bestiality
and funding so-called entitlement programs. But that's a sidetrack. Again, I don't begrudge Cephas for his point, because I think there is something to it. I just don't agree with it. You know, I mean, I see where he's coming from, I should say, from his political stance, but I do disagree with it completely because of the fact that if we were to behave in that manner, nothing would change. And again, one of my problems with the base concept of conservatism is not as they bitch spot states it as basically liberalism and progressivism is change for the sake of change, which I also disagree with that sentiment. It's change when warranted. And I think this is where these people are doing something that is warranted. Even the Christian minister as well. I mean, it's freedom of thought, and you know he could do what he wants. If he gets arrested for it, yes, he knew the consequences, and he took those consequences. And people in the West trying to get him out of those consequences is not undermining what he's doing. He's bringing attention to the absurdity of the punishment.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the biggest problem with his. Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that, you know, and whether or not how that person came to that, you know, decision, their decision tree, doesn't negate the fact that they're right. Whether or not he wanted to be a martyr, or whether or not, which there's no suggestion that he was, but whether or not either one of these gentlemen wanted to be a martyr for their cause, or they were just doing what they do, is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. They're arrested. Right. The pastor, he could be hung. They both could be. I mean, it's completely absurd. So I have absolutely no problem with blowing this up, as it were, and whining about it, if that's what you want. Because this is the change that we need to see in the world, not just in our little corner in the West.
Right. Well, I think one of the biggest problems with his argument is that how he makes his argument based on rule of law is that he's taken that concept and he's arguing it ad absurdum.
Yeah,
it's basically he's creating a logical fallacy there. He's taking it to such a ridiculous extreme that he's basically arguing for stasis
and statism, which is sort of funny coming from a conservative.
Well, not from a conservative.
I mean, that's probably not accurate.
We have a confusion modern day, at least in the U.S., of conservatism politically being equated with kind of a libertarianism, and that's not necessarily the case.
Well, you should go read Bitch Spot's about Bitch Spot. Oh wait, no, where is it? Let's Define Things section, and they define conservative, and he defines. I don't know if it's a he. Cephas defines conservatism, which I don't fully agree with their definition of conservatism, but I do think he or she is very correct about the fact that there really aren't conservatives anymore, that what we today call conservatives are neoconservatives.
Yes.
Which is
I agree with him on that point.
Good point, yeah.
It all depends on how conservative you are. I mean, H.P. Lovecraft was even more conservative because he thought we never should have fought against the crown. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's how conservative are you? Should we still be applying Hammurabi's law?
Some would say, yeah.
Who wants to get serious with this shit?
The next article we have is out of the New York Times. This got some play this week. It was called "The Way of the Agnostic" by Gary Gutting, who, when you read through this whole thing, is a professor of philosophy at the University of Notre Dame. So,
no,
you may think that he's somewhat biased. Anyway, this article is somewhat magical in its ability to be 1,000 words of total bullshit. First of all, there is the typical, and this absolutely drives me nuts, because I spent 10 years of my life calling myself an agnostic for the wrong fucking reason. Is the typical misuse of the word, Adam too, the typical misuse of the word agnosticism, or the word agnostic, and hence agnosticism. This article tries to paint agnosticism as some kind of magical middle ground where you can be right no matter what. because you're not saying anything, which if that were the case, you'd be brain dead. Nobody can really truly be agnostic, because once the idea of a deity is introduced, you either accept that or deny it out of hand.
Right.
It's about the difference between knowledge and belief.
Right,
and
which I feel like we talk about this so often in our respective little tiny universe on the internet. So I really have no idea how much this is repeated to other people. There's one problem with being, having a blog and being so active is that these arguments, you get sick of them.
They get really fucking repetitive. Yeah.
I get reminded when I talk to people that are atheists but completely uninvolved. They're like, holy shit, I never thought of it that way. Because when I just say something in passing, I'm like, I guess I'll keep fucking talking.
There are simply just not enough people who think about these things, let alone have the opportunity to have conversations about them. And this is the reason that, it's the reason that bloggers burn out. But it's also just the reason that it gets exhausting to be this type of an intellectual minority. The part that probably irritated me the most, well, there's so many in here. It's so many logical fallacies and misrepresentations. Although it seems like there's some point where he actually seems to understand atheism, which I have to give him credit for that, because I'm so used to atheism being misrepresented as nihilism or hatred of God or whatever.
I'll say that about this guy. He does not go down that path at all.
No. He doesn't go for just your basic ad hoc kind of straw man atheism stuff. And his whole point about the no argument for atheism, that basically that his version of it, which is still relatively our argument, is that the person making the claim, it's on the onus of the person making the claim to support the claim. So if there's no reason to believe the claim and no reason to accept the claim, then that's it. We don't have to necessarily make an argument for our position, because we just have to not believe what you say.
What he's doing is attacking the burden of proof claim.
Right.
Again, because he's saying the atheist argument of no argument, whereas we reject your argument. So and this is actually a true fallacy, by the way, where it's called the fallacy.
Nice.
It's where you reject somebody's argument and their conclusion, even though their conclusion could be correct. But in this case, he's trying to pull that by saying the no argument still leaves the door open for the claim. But the problem with that is that in order to destroy that argument, you have to present something. And a 1,500-word essay doesn't do that.
Oh, no, he does.
Well, he tries to...
what he does is he points out some believers, such as Alvin Plantinga, Richard Swinburne, Peter Van Inwagen.
But that's an argument from authority.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because they have examples of well thought out reasons for belief,
which
they call for serious discussion. Well, that right there it is. He doesn't actually have to point to any of those beliefs. He can just say, "Here's a couple of smart people who also believe, and they have good arguments."
But they're not good arguments. I mean, I'll take Plantinga, for instance. So his argument, the argument of the presuppositionalists, is that the Bible is correct. You are not allowed to assume that the Bible could be incorrect. So that's their starting point. They're presupposing that the Bible is correct, and that any arguments by non-Christians have to be invalid because they don't accept that the Bible is completely true and correct.
Yeah, it's basically if you can, if you're smart enough to question it, then your ability to question it came from God.
Right. And I mean, Plantinga's argument and the others that make this same type of apologetic argument, it is internally valid. I mean, in philosophy, there's a difference.
Internally.
Right.
Yes.
There's a difference between an argument being valid and an argument being true.
Yes.
Yeah.
This argument is valid, but it is not true.
It's logically consistent. It's just bullshit.
Right. His argument is essentially, all dogs have hands, and you are not allowed to dispute this point. Jack has hands. therefore Jack is a dog.
There it is.
Some
Right.
little guy.
So in the center, there's a piece of truth. Because, I mean, you do have hands, correct, Jack?
I do. Last I checked.
So they will put in little pieces of truth in the center of their syllogism, and they will use that to try and say, well, see, there's some true things here in the middle. But when you go back to try and attack the basis of their whole argument, they say, well, no, you can't do that. Why not? Well, because we say you can't.
It's brilliant, really.
I mean, they have set the rules, and they've set the rules up so that you can't argue with them. It is Calvinism at its fucking best.
Mm-hmm. There was something in here, and you guys will know this. Rub me the wrong way as soon as I say it. Gutting defines faith as belief on reliable testimony.
Oh.
Anybody else catch that?
Yeah.
Because I just went, since when has that been defined as belief on reliable testimony?
Mm-hmm.
I looked through several different dictionaries, by the way, because I have written a lot on faith, in case anybody doesn't know about that. And I've actually used various definitions of faith and cited them in all my, essays on the subject. And I have never, ever, ever seen it defined in such a manner. It's almost as if he made it up.
Well, reliable testimony sounds like a definition for evidence.
Belief on reliable testimony, it's a legal matter.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Or a scientific one in some cases. But even stretching the non-religious definitions of the word, which they constantly do, I have never ever heard it defined as such. It's completely made up that faith is defined as reliable testimony. Because revelation is not reliable testimony. Scripture is not reliable testimony. It nearly gives me an aneurysm to think about it. Because it is complete. I mean, he literally just made that up for all, I'm sure he's an intelligent man. That is a completely bullshit statement. And the entire argument as a whole is bullshit. Because he simply lists, as we were saying, the no argument, and then tries to dismantle, or not even dismantle it, dismiss it by shifting the burden of proof. But he acts as if that's the only argument for atheism.
That would be an interesting bit of satire to this piece. You do the whole thing, but you just replace the word religion with gullible.
Nice.
Gullibility is belief in reliable testimony.
Now, the part that really got me is when he starts talking about agnosticism, and he goes into that there may be a physical science that will ultimately give us a complete account of reality, and he really just uses this whole thing to set up these other kind of not necessarily philosophical things, but just abstract concepts. And
he does it in a way that makes absolutely no sense.
Yes, and it reminds me of Richard Dawkins and the Al Jazeera guy, where he's talking about consciousness and personality and moral obligation and beauty. And it's the old argument of, these are some other things that you can't empirically prove exist. And this is one of those things. I'm so sick of this false comparison of these abstract concepts like, love or justice or any of those things.
Morality.
And
he talks about
morality, exactly.
Yep.
Right.
And somehow that is supposed to be equal to the claim that the creator of the universe has feelings and has thoughts.
Yeah, it is a very kind of it's like assuming our agency to be a kind of pantheist. It's analogous because what he says is that if there comes a point where science can prove, can demonstrate all the causal relationships and accurately predict what's going to happen next in any given situation. Then he goes on to say, that doesn't tell us anything about whether it's right or good. So it's basically saying, you might do something, but you might not like the fact that you're doing it. And
wow, how profound is that?
Well, he's essentially saying that we have to be determinists in order for science to be right. In order for atheism to be right, then we have to live in a determinist universe. And that's not the case. That's not the case at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you
It
get
may, it
when
may
when,
be
when you
the case eventually, but that's still not the
right,
case.
right, and from what we know right now, of physics, especially down at the quantum level, things tend to get fuzzy. So there may or may not be a hard determinism, but
Yeah,
this whole idea is ridiculous. I mean, it's so flawed.
It boils down to don't be an atheist because love exists. Or
yet again.
You don't be an emotional theist, but be an intellectual atheist. Like, like you have to, like it is because these other things are out there, because there isn't an explanation for every single detail. That must mean that the miraculous is possible.
Yeah, this is something.
My Sky Daddy made everything.
Right.
You just can't make.
Well, yeah, exactly. This is something that has bothered me in my dealings with you. Generally, I'm sure he's probably a liberal theist by his writing.
Probably.
I mean, he's obviously not a conservative. I've had these same issues with my liberal theist friends. It basically comes down to, if you read this just last paragraph, I mean, read the whole thing, but read the last paragraph. He basically comes back to religious agnostics. I mean, he's talking about agnostic theism are the ones that are in the correct, right? Because we can't know, but there's still the assumption of the existence. But it's almost as if they will defend a very specific religion such as Christianity, or even a specific religious tradition such as Abrahamism, which encompasses the majority of the world.
Mm-hmm.
They will defend that concept based on the fact that you can't know. It's one of my biggest problems with agnostic theists when they start defending specific theisms.
There are particular events in the Bible, in the Old Testament. There are particular events that are written in that book that we know did not either happen that way or didn't happen at all.
Mm-hmm.
The New Testament as well. The entire fucking Book of Mormon.
The winged horse.
Yeah, right. I mean, we don't know that a winged horse didn't. But the probability of it is ridiculously fucking minuscule.
Well, the thing is you, and this is the problem with having this type of an argument with particularly with a liberal theist, is because you will have this broadening and narrowing depending on the argument. So they'll say, well, my guy doesn't hate homosexuals. Well, that's a very narrow claim. You say, well, how do you know that? Well, we can't know anything about him because he's too big. They make it broad when you put them in a corner, and then they make it narrow when it comes to something specific that they want to say.
Kind of what I was saying last episode of it being this argument of distraction from one argument to another, where you just kind of get kicked off into arguing about some other fallacy that is completely unrelated to the point you were trying to make in the first place.
That's actually another fallacy. I don't remember the name of it, but I don't want to go look it up.
It's a bait and switch.
Yeah,
because people get tired of when you sit there and rattle off fallacies, even though they still exist.
There's a fallacy for that, actually. Is there a fallacy app? There needs to be a fucking fallacy app.
It really should be.
Somebody make this happen.
It would be pretty much like when you talk, it buzzes at you. Because you know what? I catch myself doing some stupid shit sometimes now that I know. I'm like, ooh, did I just say that? All right.
Yeah, but it would be all fucked up, just like autocorrect. Like you'd be typing some shit on your phone. And I'd be like, no, that's an ad hominem. You're like, no, it's really not. The guy's an asshole. Like, definitive proof that he's an asshole.
You could get like Leonard Nimoy to do the voice, but that would be illogical, Steve.
Then I would listen to it unconditionally.
Hey, how's it going? Welcome, you godless sons and daughters of reason. Welcome, you blasphemers of the Holy Spirit. This is Andrew Hall. This is the Laughing in Purgatory section of the Left Hemispheres podcast. Here we go. I want to say that we're brought to you today by Islamic Jihad Pajamas. Islamic Jihad Pajamas for that little guy or girl who wants to get into paradise. Islamic Jihad Pajamas approved by the Sharia courts of Islamic Jihad in Palestine. Islamic Jihad Pajamas. Buy the burqa pajamas. It's a one-piece for the girls without any eye slits. She can't even walk around without a male relative to guide them around. you got to go out, you got to go buy some Islamic Jihad pajamas. I want to start telling you all that I may be giving $300 to the Institute for Marriage and Public Policy ran by that woman, Maggie Gallagher. Yes, the Institute for Marriage and Public Policy is newspeak, Orwellian speak, for being an anti-gay marriage organization, and I may be actually giving them $300 in a couple of weeks. See, what my goal is, what I wanted to do is drop weight. I've been gaining weight at approximately 5 pounds a year for the last 4 years. My body mass index has been rising to sickeningly high levels. And so I was listening to the Mark Maron podcast, and I heard about stick.com. That's STICKK.com. And what those people do is that you sign up for a behavioral contract. Instead of giving you a cookie, instead of giving you a reward, what they do is you put some money into an escrow account, and if you do not actually make your goal, they will give your money to an anti-charity. That's right, to an anti-charity. So you could give it theoretically to the Westboro Baptist Church, you could give it to the Catholic Church, you could give it to the Boy Scouts, any kind of organization that you don't like. Now, this is called loss aversion. It is a psychological term, loss aversion, and it is much more powerful than actually getting reward. People, basically us monkeys, want to keep the stuff that we have. It's a much larger incentive to keep the stuff we have than actually getting a reward, and that's why Stick.com has been getting more and more popular. No, I'm not a shill for Stick.com. I'm just using their site. This is the first time I've used them. I want to drop 20 pounds. What I'm doing, I'm going to be dropping 1 pound a week for 20 weeks. Now, if I do not lose 1 pound a week, for a week, $15 will go to the Institute for Marriage and Public Policy. So that means I have to actually get on my game every week. I have my wife who is keeping me in check, who is the referee, who is going to be at my weigh-ins every week. And you know what? If I don't make it, those bastards are going to be getting my money. So I might do a video blog about it. I'll probably talk about it on the blog a bit. And what's funny about Stick.com is it was actually created by 2 Yale economists, I believe, who were doing research into behavioral economics, which is really big these days. I guess I should have put that in. So hey, over the next couple of podcasts, next couple of weeks, you're going to find out whether or not I'm giving a bunch of bigots my money or not. So that's one of the big things that's going on with me. I went to yoga camp the other day with my wife. Yoga camp is Kripalu. Kripalu is based in the western part of the state of Massachusetts. It was once a Jesuit-run building. They used to, I guess, train Jesuit priests, and now it is basically a hippie commune for people who want to go out there and do yoga. I thought that I'd be killing 2 birds with 1 stone when I went out there with her. This would be counting as together time with a wife, which is always good. It keeps me out of trouble. And it also allows me to, actually I'm killing 3 birds with 1 stone, I guess. I get the time with the wife, I get to actually exercise a little bit, and I also get a lot of material for the blog. Because, the thing is about Hinduism is that, those of us in the West, we just assume that we have a monopoly on crazy here between Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. But oh no, my friends, let me tell you, Hinduism is a whole pot of batshit crazy. A couple of things I figured out when I was out there, which I learned, is that I could get my aura photographed. That's right, they offered special aura photography, but it just wasn't any kind of aura photography. I could get a regular aura photograph. I could get a full body aura photograph. So I imagine that the regular just shows my head aura for some reason, maybe my shoulders. But not only that, but I can get a past life aura reading. Very exciting. Needless to say, I didn't want to shell out the $50 to get my aura read or photographed. Too bad for me, right? Another thing I learned when I was out in yoga camp, is that, if you rub your hands together really, really hard for 30 seconds, you can actually heal yourself. I was in a yoga class, and the 20-something-year-old, 99-pound yoga instructor was rubbing her hands and putting them over her body to where it hurt to heal herself. And so the next time I go into the doctor's office, I'm going to say, hey, I don't want you washing your hands. I just want to see you rub your hands really, really hard and put them where it hurts, because that's what I learned at yoga camp. Hey, a lot of you probably already know about Bobby Jindal. He's the governor of Louisiana in the past. He's been pro-creationist. He's been pretty pro-dumb in the past, but recently he has stood up and said, hey, I don't think we should be the stupid party anymore. And I was reflecting about what would be the top 10 ways of Bobby Jindal planning to improve the Republican Party. So let's start with number 10. He calls stupid people stupid in order to fool less stupid people into joining the Republican Party. Ninth way, attract Hispanics to the party by holding Loco Taco and Piñata Night at local Republican meetings. Eighth way of how Bobby Jindal plans to improve the Republican Party. Go back to the good old days of George W. Bush and not give a shit about the budget. Number 7. Attract more minorities into the GOP, like smokers. For example, aren't they a persecuted minority, smokers? I heard that on Rush Limbaugh the other day. True. Number 6. Sixth way for Bobby Jindal plans to improve the Republican Party. Set things right with Rush Limbaugh heading the Department of Education in a Bobby Jindal administration. That should send a fucking shiver up your spine. Number 5. Jindal wants the GOP not to be friends of big banks or big government, but of little banks, little government, and teeny, weeny, eeny ideas. Fourth way how Bobby Jindal plans to improve the Republican Party. Republican talking points will no longer be written by graduates of Louisiana State University, but by a third grader in the Cambridge, Massachusetts school system. Number 3. Finally get some clarity on legitimate rape by using biblically based guidelines. For example, quote, if within a city a man comes upon a maiden who is betrothed and has relations with her, you shall bring them both out of the gate of the city and there stone them to death. The girl because she did not cry out for help, though she was in the city, and the man because he violated his neighbor's wife. And that is in the good book in Deuteronomy 22:23-24. The second way that Bobby Jindal plans to improve the Republican Party by making it less stupid. Pray to God for smarts. The Almighty gave them the stupid, and he will unstupidify them. And the first way that Bobby Jindal plans to make the Republican Party less stupid is fund a blue ribbon commission with Ken Ham from Answers in Genesis to finally get to the bottom of the evolution controversy. And that, I would think, is his plans to improve the Republican Party. Hey, this has been Andrew Hall. This has been the Laughing in Purgatory section of the Left Hemispheres podcast. Don't pray for me to lose 1 pound this week, but send me your support. Thanks a lot. I don't want to give those people money. Goodbye.
Okay, next up on the list is, well, we're just going to do a whole lot of right-wing America stuff now.
Yeah, Texas. This actually has a happy ending.
It does.
This one part. From the TFN Insider, which is, what the hell do they stand for? Texas Freedom Network. Texas public school Bible classes teach races come from Noah's son and black people come from Ham. So you know they're a little bit lower. And there's a biblical literalism aspect to that, which is like of course, the old 6,000-year-old earth. Anyway, yeah, so it's biblical literalism, so you know it's bullshit. But the fact that, this makes it into the public school system is pretty atrocious. This happens all over the country, though, which I think generally people are completely unaware of. Again, this is one of those things where in our circle, in the atheist sphere, atheist podcasts, atheist blogs, Twitter, whatever, we hear this shit all the time, but in general, most Americans do not. For once, there's a happy ending to this story. The Texas School Board of Education, which in the past has held an insane amount of sway when it comes to curricula for schools across the country, has lost its power to basically revise a lot of these textbooks. Now it comes down to more of the states have more of a right. It's not just the school, the Board of Education, I should say, not the school board.
Well, my understanding is that the individual schools in Texas now get to choose their own curriculum
Yes.
So long as they ascribe to something like half of the Texas School Board recommendations.
Yeah,
which means you can cut out all of the science bullshit. You accept their
true
English and geography, and you're pretty much okay.
Right. So it all comes down to what school you're in, which is still a problem. Let's not make a mistake about it. This still leaves a huge margin of, horrible educational standards for kids in Texas and really across the board. Because again, Texas is so large, along with California, as the article states, that they have been able to dictate just by sheer numbers from these textbook companies. I mean, they're not going to print more than they have to. They're not going to make different versions because that's not profitable.
Right. So, they basically go into schools and say, here are the books we have based on the Texas and California recommendations.
What do you want us to put in the books?
Yeah, but the people they say that to places like Texas and California, but then they go to fucking, South Dakota and say, these are the books we have.
What do you want? And it's full all this bullshit.
Now, it is worth mentioning, though, just so we don't kind of overshoot it, that this is specifically Bible classes in school. So it isn't just the regular, it's not happening in science class, although I'm sure it probably is. But these are elective classes. Now, the part that I find hysterical about this is that it's not like a Bible as literature class or, Bible as, cultural significance, which it is culturally significant. It is literature. You could have an objective study of the Bible in school, which wouldn't be any violation of any establishment clause. It wouldn't be prayer in school per se, or
there are plenty of places where you can put it.
Right. But it isn't that at all. It's just proselytizing, which is I can't even overstate how much it irritates me that if you have something that is supposed to be true, that you can't do an objective study of it. Like, if the Bible were actually true, you could do an objective study of it and it would reveal the truth. But you can't do an objective study of it, so you have to insert all this proselytizing, so that you have to basically supplement the material with rhetoric to make it sound.
Yeah, I mean, you could say, well, it's just their Bible course, but then you got to ask yourself, what? I mean,
I don't have a problem with that, because it's the same as taking, basket weaving.
Yeah,
Well, but if that's the only class that they're offering, they're not offering a Quran class.
Is there a Bhagavad Gita course?
Right.
And is that objective?
Well,
I mean, within this, the Texas Freedom Network report, again, they're teaching that Jews have a dysfunctional religion. I mean, this is what's being taught in these so-called secular Bible courses. The earth is 6,000 years old. The United States was founded as a Christian nation based on Christian biblical principles taught in their classrooms. I mean, black people are descendants of Ham.
I knew a person who believed this. The first time I heard about this was from a person who actually believed it. That there was, Noah's 3 sons, and that the races came from those sons, and particularly the dark-skinned people came from Ham. And I actually looked at her, and I was like, "You believe what?" Like, I couldn't, as culturally sensitive as I wanted to be.
No,
I was just what? But I was just astounded that this actually, that this idea has any kind of merit. And of course, it was
a Mennonite.
A Mennonite, that's right.
She was Mennonite.
But in a lot of weird ways, it kind of goes the other direction. Like, there was a story out this week where DNA testing demonstrated a link between Native American and Chinese ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
Which, for the most part, we say, hey, great, that's cool to know. But then you get, tribes who say, well, our religion says we grew out of the canyon.
Right.
And you're just like, so you're going to make this data useless based on what you think, which is wrong.
Right. It's
demonstrably wrong. Like, I mean, we have evidence.
Because of the culture that we live in, we tend to think of creationism as a mostly, Christian or Abrahamic thing, but there's
all kinds of them.
Right, yeah. There are American Indian and Hindu, and
well,
other.
I mean, that particular example, that goes against not just Native American teaching, but it goes against Mormon teaching, too.
That's right.
And in the Southwest, those are both a big deal.
Because the Native Americans crawled out of the pits of hell in Mormonism, right? Or something like that?
No, they're Jewish.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, the Lost Tribe of Israel. Yeah, I know.
Which doesn't make any fucking sense at all, but it doesn't matter.
Although it makes Blazing Saddles. They darker than us.
Moving on. We're going to start talking about abortion now, aren't we?
Briefly. I don't really care. I just
hope so.
I had one point about this. New polls support Roe v. Wade. It's a strong majority oppose overturning it. This past week was on Tuesday, was the 40th anniversary of the Supreme Court decision, the 7-2 decision, ruling allowing for legal abortions during the entire pregnancy. This made news for about 2 minutes, of course. 70% of Americans would say they would not favor it being overturned, and 57% of those saying they feel strongly about their opinion. And this 70% mark is the highest number in support of keeping the law since the poll was first conducted in July of 1989, when back then 58% felt the same way. The only point I wanted to make about this is that the so-called pro-life, which are real, anti-choice, whatever you want to call them, I don't really care, fueled by the conservative Christians in America, the right wing, the entire GOP party, are actually but they're a minority, and we allow them in this country to have a bigger voice than they really should have. If you're talking about numbers, in a straight democracy, which we're not, but
well, that's not any different than, say, the Tea Party. I mean, it's a loud minority.
Exactly, but they have an inordinate amount of power. I think people would be surprised to see that 70% of Americans support Roe v. Wade, and 58% of those strongly support it. Right. That's enough to get somebody elected, by the way.
And the other,
well beyond.
One of the things that I find interesting, and I found this to come out in an interesting way in people that I know, is that the polls also show that the people who say they're pro-life and the people who say they're pro-choice are more or less split down the middle. There are a lot of people that I know that say that they are quote-unquote pro-life that also think that people should be allowed to have abortions.
Yeah.
They're personally pro-life.
Right.
But they are institutionally pro-choice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's what this
that would be the
that's where I fall
that's
on
the
that
point difference.
Same here. Yeah.
You know what? Yeah, and I wouldn't disagree.
Right. I mean, I don't think that abortion should be used as a condom. I think that's irresponsible.
No,
that is irresponsible, and I kind of find it detestable when I see so many people that talk about it as if it was popping a zit.
Yeah.
Which I see all the time on. Well, it hasn't been so much lately, but I've seen people on like social media, especially Twitter, basically talking about abortion as if it was popping a zit. Now, it depends on what stage, which gets into the whole...
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between the morning after pill and 20 weeks in. But there was a really interesting bit on NPR this week with... I'll look it up and put in the show notes. I don't remember who it was, but there was this woman who had to have the new transvaginal ultrasound procedure.
Mm-hmm.
And she just happened to have her abortion scheduled like the week after it went into effect. And she talked at great length about how invasive it was, and the doctor's like, look, I'm sorry, but I have to read you this script, and the nurse turns up the radio to kind of give her this opportunity to block it out. I mean,
Wow.
Yeah, it's terrible. There's no excuse. And the reason she was having it was because she found out that the child was going to be born with a horrible birth defect, and she just decided that it was better off, you know?
Yeah.
The most noble reason that most people can think of.
Yeah.
Aside from
well,
the
that's
usual.
not acceptable to a parent minority,
Right.
which holds a huge sway.
One of the things that I think about, though, is that this is one of those things. This is like gun control legislation, where there's a certain amount of rhetoric that you can just spit out, where you know that you know that it's not going to actually change. But what you do is you fire up this small bass, that small loud bass, and the rest of the people that agree with essentially the rest of your positions will just go along with you and vote for you anyway. So it's a safe thing for somebody like Santorum to say that I would just, I'm going to try to overturn Roe v. Wade. And,
of course.
Right, and you work up your base into a lather, and the rest of the people that were probably going to vote for you anyway, they just kind of go along with it because they're like, yeah, right, whatever.
And I think this is one of those cases where, not one of those cases, but I think it's a prime example of, how people criticize Islam, where it's like, where are the moderates? The moderates need to speak up because the only people that we hear from are the fundamentalists, and they control too much of the narrative, X, Y, Z. This is the same thing in America, which we have talked about on Left Hemispheres for 2.5 years now, about moderate and liberal theists. They sit on their thumbs because these numbers, they spell it out. We know how many people are Christian in this country, and then we can see how many people are pro-choice, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's a massive overlap of Christians that are pro-choice. Massive overlap. But
the same goes for the people that are pro-gay marriage.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The pro-life, the conservative Christians in this country really are a minority. They want to paint themselves as a victim, but it's bullshit because they have way too much say, really. They're constantly in charge of the narrative. The entire GOP has swung in their favor. They have done a fantastic job over the past 40 years of taking over the Republican Party and making it a Christian nationalist party. And only now is it somewhat of a backlash, and not enough.
They have lots of tax-free money.
Yeah,
that gets funneled into it.
Exactly.
Good point. Yeah,
they're extremely moneyed. They're extremely organized, and they have a homeschooled network of little drones that they can fly out into America.
Generation Joshua.
Yeah.
Well, but that plays into. I don't mean to.
No, go ahead.
I'm like Noam Chomsky, but there's definitely something to be said for the self-perpetuating nature of the people in power, putting into place laws that keep the population undereducated, that then support their reelection.
Well, that's the whole anti-science and education thing. It's all right there. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you silence dissent, and really controlling the narrative is the name of the game. If you can, and they are much better at controlling the narrative, mainly because you don't get as many naysayers in the neoconservative movement as you do. Liberals argue with each other more.
There's been plenty of studies saying that conservatives are generally more prone to authoritarianism and all that,
but it turns into hive mind when you put it into real practice.
Going beyond that, they've also got the money to control the narrative because they can afford to engage in a 24-hour news cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you look at smaller groups like non-theists, there's not a big enough pool, and we're not tax sheltered. So if you look at what goes on in the 24-hour news cycle, the only person representing atheists in 24-hour news cycle is Dave Silver.
Right.
Yeah.
Which Pittsburgh, I have to give Pittsburgh and Allegheny County, which contains Pittsburgh, some credit. They've been having problems raising revenue for the past couple of years, And I think it's something like religious nonprofits cost the city of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County $93 million a year.
It's absurd.
Oh my God.
So
that's not even a big city, really.
Right. Pittsburgh is called the smallest big city in America.
Yeah.
But so, and this isn't just, it's not just, they're not doing this just to go after the religious nonprofits, but they just passed a resolution that nonprofits have to prove their nonprofit status. And the religious nonprofits are losing their shit over this.
Mm-hmm. Because they're not.
Right.
As a side note, which has comedic value, the priest that got caught handcuffing and gagging himself.
Yeah.
You guys remember that?
Yeah.
Did you actually listen to the 911 tape?
No.
No.
Oh, you have to go to, I'll put it in the show notes. The Godless Geek blog did it on his podcast, Kane. It's hysterical. You could tell the 911 operator has to like step away a few times to not laugh, I think. But at one point asked them, "Are you a place of business?" And through the gag, the priest is like, "Yeah, we're a place of business." Which is funny on so many levels. Because not only is he saying it through a gag, but he's basically like, "Yes, we are a place of business."
Right.
It's a church.
Well, I've always held that churches, synagogues, mosques, whatever, they provide a disservice to people. Tell me, the average church contributes 15% of their income to charity.
15, really?
15%. That's what the average. That's what the average. The average church in the United States gives 15%. How is, and this isn't to disparage your profession, Adam. I'm no Tom Cruise.
Good setup, by the way. Carry on.
Yeah, that's worth it.
But I mean, they're providing, like counseling, moral support. Like that's what they say anyway. They're providing counseling, moral support, through whether through a spiritual medium, or what have you. But now they're doing it in a totally fucked up and counterproductive manner. But they've been getting away with it for millennia. So they're essentially providing a counseling service. Like it's a mass. What do they call that, Adam? Where you have a group session.
I think it's response team or something like that.
It's basically like a big group session, right?
Yeah, just group therapy.
Group therapy, right? Based on bullshit principles.
Mm-hmm.
A circle jerk,
right? And then you give them money.
Circle jerk, Steve.
Right. Yes. And then you give them money, or not, but most people who attend or at least regularly attend give them money, and then they get to not only be tax free, but free of the obligation to report any of their earnings, which no other nonprofit group gets that benefit of the doubt.
So we haven't even gotten to the second.
No, we haven't, and which is the beauty. Thing. This is like, again, the money shot. In malpractice case, Catholic hospital argues fetuses aren't people.
This is my favorite article of the whole week, hands down.
It absolutely is. I saw this and I let out a hallelujah. I gotta
have an amen.
Yeah, this article made my week,
and it's so horrible. Can we just say that? The entire situation, the circumstances around it.
It's atrocious.
I want to say ungodly, but that's not the right word.
Everything about this story is terrible. Okay, so basically here's what happened. Woman goes into labor. She is pregnant with twins. There's a problem with the delivery. They call the doctor on call. He doesn't answer his phone for a few fucking hours. And therefore, the wife and both the twins die. The husband sues the hospital on wrongful death suits for the wife and both the kids. It's a Catholic hospital. The Catholic hospital is saying, no. those two twins don't count because they're still fetuses and they're not people.
Ta-da.
That's the gist of the argument right there. And it
do you think that came down from on high?
No, I think the lawyers recommended it, and they just went along with whatever the lawyers said. Which, really, assuming that the guy is suing for a particular amount, based on that, you could calculate the value of a human life according to the Catholic Church.
Right.
Well, according to the court system, let's not...
Tree fitty.
No, but I mean, as the defendant in the case, the hospital has the option of going to the lawyer and saying, no, we will not pursue that line of defense.
Oh, yeah,
it is
absolutely.
on them to say that this is the defense we're going to pursue.
But I guarantee they won't.
I like to imagine myself
because
being the person, like being a fly on the wall in the room where they say, babies, not people. Let's try to save the church some money.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the hospital, I should say, because it's not the Vatican is not paying this bill. This comes from the hospital. This is a corporate decision.
Well, it's a corporate decision, but it is a Catholic hospital, which means at least some of the money is coming from the Vatican, and at the very least, some of the money is coming from the local Catholic parish.
That's been one of the brilliant, one of the brilliant things the Catholic Church has done in the United States, because it's not like this in the rest of the world. But in the United States, the Catholic Church has established itself, like each parish is its own thing. Like it's
like a fast food chain.
Right.
It's a franchise.
They've broken it down to protect themselves from legal damages.
Right. Because you can only take so
really
much.
The shit that's going on, all the evidence that we have, like for the sex abuse scandals, the Church in Rome could be sued, and all that the U.S. court would need would be for the Italian courts to say yes, they are liable, and then you could sue the fucking Vatican, even though the Vatican's his own country, which is
bullshit. Thanks to Mussolini.
Yes, thanks to Mussolini and Hitler.
Along with the boatload of money. That was another thing.
Is Vatican City a member of the UN?
I believe so. They have what are the they have their own ambassadors, and I mean
they are.
What are they called?
I didn't think they were part of the UN.
I think they have like observer status or something like that.
Yeah, I mean they're not
the United States.
They're
passing around a collection plate. That's all.
Yeah. They're not sending the Swiss Guard out to aid in peacekeeping missions.
Don't even joke about that, because imagine if they did.
Oh, jeez.
I wouldn't be happy about that. So.
We're a bunch of guys with halberds out there.
I'd kind of laugh about it because those outfits are so fucking stupid.
Those guys know how to do fucking AR.
Oh,
or an M16.
The majority of the Swiss Guard you don't even see.
This case is just, I mean, it breaks the irony scale.
When you put this up against the event from a month or two ago, where the woman in Ireland,
I know,
died because they refused, and they said,
well, it's just the same thing.
It is. Well, it is, except that they said that the reason why they couldn't save her was because they weren't going to abort the dead fetus.
Dead fetus.
Right.
Right.
Here, they're saying that the fetuses, which were still apparently viable, were really people.
Yep.
Well,
so,
I mean, the thing about this is that the doctor who was on call just didn't call in when he got his page. He wasn't paying attention to his phone. This is clearly a case of malpractice. It's just a matter of whether it's one person or three people.
Right.
That's the argument, and the church has decided that it's one person.
Which is a change for the church, because usually it's three people in one.
Oh man, this whole thing just kills me. The fact that they had the balls to come out and say this is just it really boggles. There is nothing the Catholic Church won't do.
But you know what though? They are so insulated They can do this because the national memory is so fucking short. They can do this.
I think it's getting longer and longer.
It's getting longer only because now there's an internet record of everything and it's accessible.
Absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm sure you saw the article this week or the past week or so that the internet is the worst thing in the world for religion.
Yeah.
It's absolutely destroying religion.
I put it in the FLD before last. Yeah.
Well, the only reason I disagree with that is because there are plenty of people that I know, people that I thought in the past were rational human beings, that have bought into all of the bullshit new religious movements that
the New Age stuff.
Well, I wouldn't even say New Age, but aliens did it.
You know what though? I mean that's just like a sample size problem.
It's like it's just that.
Yeah,
that
you're going to have an influx
thinking
of conspiracy theories and sort of like a weird religious thing, but you're going to have a decrease in the traditional religion.
Yes, you are. Yeah. Well, all this information. One of my biggest arguments about, and this is one of the things that Craig, William Lane Craig, argued about is the amount of time. It was only a couple decades between when Jesus supposedly died and when the Gospels were written, and that doesn't leave enough time for legends to be built up. For the myth making process. And my answer to that is Elvis.
Or shit.
No, Elvis.
Elvis.
No.
Yeah.
Elvis
is great.
Elvis.
Yeah.
In this age of technology, the 1970s, right? In the 1970s, Elvis Presley died. He died on my father's 18th birthday, August 16th.
Nice. Not really nice.
And well, right.
That's inappropriate, man.
Marilyn Monroe died on my mom's 4th birthday.
Whoa.
And
your parents are the cursed.
They are. Apparently, they are.
You were the demon seed.
Well, what's even worse is when my mom asked why, because it was all over the news that she committed suicide. When my mom, at 4 years old, asked my grandmother why she killed herself, my grandmother tells her, "Well, because she found out how beautiful you are, darling."
Jesus Christ!
I know. Yeah. The 1970s, which the 70s wasn't. Al Gore hadn't invented the internet yet. But it's a very well-informed time. We have witnesses. We have fucking death certificates. The whole, people fucking viewed the body, blah, 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 blah. Yet, there are still people who contend that Elvis didn't fucking die. A la, Bubba Hotep. And if people can believe in this modern day that someone who died didn't die, or an even better example, one which I talked about before, where my uncle-in-law and grandfather-in-law believe that Hillary Clinton has been dead for several months now. And
you talked about this last episode.
Right.
Yeah.
If people in this fucking day and age can believe that kind of bullshit, in the fucking first century,
since you're talking about Elvis and discrepancies, I'm going to put this link in the show notes for Penn and Teller did a bit very much along the same lines where they talked about 2 separate cookbooks of Elvis's quote unquote favorite recipes. Mm-hmm. And they have differing recipes for his favorite fried chicken recipe. And this is, 30 years out.
Yeah.
And if we haven't been able to decide on that,
right?
I mean, the going back 2,000 years. Come on, what are the fucking odds?
It reminds me of that internet meme where Jesus is like, "I told you guys, I hate figs."
Yeah. See, that's funny on a couple levels. He was a dick to that fig tree.
Yeah. He really was.
How dare you not produce fruit out of season, you son of a bitch?